days.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. Muslims across the world celebrate the Eid al-Fitr amid calls for faithfuls not to discard the teaching of Ramadan. Gunman kills 10 family members in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province. Beijing reinstates that both sides of the Taiwan Strait belongs to China. My name is Tunde Ido. As Muslims across Nigeria celebrate the Eid al-Fitr, the Osun State Governor, Ademola Adeleke, has urged adherents of the faith not to discard the teachings of Ramadan. The governor gave the admonition when he joined Muslim faithfuls across the state to observe the Eid prayers at the Eid praying ground Okebale, Osogbo, the state capital. Olayinka Ale was there at the Eid praying ground and files in this report.
Osun State Governor Senator Ademola Adeleke has joined Muslim faithful across the states to observe the Eid prayers for the Eid al-Fitr celebration at the Eid praying ground Okebale, Osogbo today. This marks the end of the 30-day fasting according to Muslim injunction. The governor enjoined the Muslims to continue to live with love, sacrifice and piety as they did throughout the period of fasting. Adeleke said the act of love, sacrifice and sharing amongst the Islamic brethren must not end with the month, urging them to extend those virtues beyond the holy month. He equally admonished them to be prayerful and abstain from sin, just as they have during Ramadan.
Well, after this Ramadan, they should know, because we are all human beings. It's only God that is 100%. We are not 100%. But they should try and abide from the fasting of that 30 days. A lot of people stay away from a lot of things. They should try to abide by it. It's not going to be easy, but they should just try. And they should be more prayerful all the time, because I know during the fasting there's prayer every time. They should continue that prayer so Osun can move forward, so Osun can get to the promised land.
The chief imam of Osogbo, Sheikh Musa Animashao, in his sermon implored Muslims to worship God in spirit and in truth, saying life is vanity. Therefore, they should not hesitate to serve God regardless of who they are or the position they hold. The Muslim cleric equally tasked faithful to flee from sin. Olayinka Ali, Western Spring Television News.
And news out of Nigeria, gunmen kills 10 members of the same family during an attack outside the city of Pietermaritzburg in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province. Police were called to the house in the township of the Imbali by neighbors who heard gunshots in the early hours of this morning during a power cut. The motive of the murder of the 7 women and 3 men remains yet to be ascertained. Police Minister Becky Cele and top management of the South African Police Force visited the crime scene this afternoon. Mr. Cele had recently admitted that the country had a serious problem with gun violence. This is the second mass shooting in KwaZulu-Natal this week after 4 other people were shot and killed yesterday in a home in KwaMashu, north of the port of Durban.
As police were attending to this, they received information that there are people who were doing some cleansing down about 1.5 kilometers from here. Well, we have gone and see that scene. In that scene, there were 4 people who were standing outside, and as they saw the police, they exchanged fire with the police. Police shot back, killed 1, injured 1 was arrested, and 1 is arrested and injured. 1 has run away. Fortunately, they know who ran away. So we have seen one of those guys, and they gave us the story.
Still in South Africa, police have evicted a group of asylum seekers who were camped outside the regional headquarters of the UN Refugee Agency in Pretoria. Local authorities says the makeshift shelters have no water, electricity or sanitation and pose a health hazard. The migrants, many of whom are from the Democratic Republic of Congo, have reportedly refused to be moved to the Lindela Deportation Center for undocumented migrants, which they say is unsafe. They have furthermore demanded safe passage to a third country. In the meantime, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has denied reports that the Ethiopian army attacked Sudanese forces in the border area of Al-Fasaga. Mr. Abiy, in a tweet, said those disseminating the allegations were trying to gain political mileage at a time the Ethiopian and Sudanese peoples are facing many challenges. He strongly condemned the allegations that he said were aimed at marring the cordial relations and neighborliness between Ethiopia and Sudan. The Prime Minister's comment followed reports that Ethiopian forces attacked Sudanese forces in the disputed Fatal al-Fashaga region on Tuesday amid the continuing clashes between rival forces in Sudan. Sudan and Ethiopia have been embroiled in a bitter dispute over the region, with Khartoum sending troops there and seizing control of most of it in 2021. Meanwhile, gunfire was reported in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, and the city of Bahri, despite the rapid support forces announcing a truce after 6 days of fighting to coincide with the start of the Eid al-Fitr holiday. According to residents, the capital was rocked by bombing and shelling before the ceasefire announcement, adding that soldiers were deploying on foot into some neighborhoods. In the latest figure released by the World Health Organization, over 400 people have been killed and over 3,500 others hurt in the conflict.
Sudan's paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, said it had agreed to a 72-hour truce from 6 a.m. on Friday, but residents of Khartoum and its sister city, Bahri, reported gunfire as Sudanese troops were deployed in the cities on foot. The RSF early on Friday announced a ceasefire after 6 days of fighting to coincide with the start of the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr and to allow residents to reunite with their families. The UN, US and other countries have been pushing for a 3-day truce to mark the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr.
We have just finished a meeting convened by the African Union on the dramatic situation in Sudan, bringing together the United Nations, the League of Arab States, IGAD and the European Union, as well as representatives from a number of countries that are deeply committed to solving the crisis. There was a strong consensus on condemning the ongoing fighting in Sudan and calling for a cessation of hostilities. As an immediate priority, I appeal for a ceasefire to take place for at least 3 days, marking the Eid al-Fitr celebrations, to allow civilians trapped in conflict zones to escape and to seek medical treatment, food, and other essential supplies.
There was no immediate comment from the army and its Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who did not mention a ceasefire in a pre-recorded speech posted on the army's Facebook page.
سقط القتلى والجرحى وتشردت الأسر ودمرت المنشآت والمنازل، فالخراب والدمار وأصوات الرصاص ما تركت مجالا لفرح يستحقه أهلنا في كل ربوع بلادنا الحبيبة، فإننا لجد حزينون لهذا المآل، لكن يبقى الأمل الدائم في أننا مع شعبنا العظيم سنتجاوز هذه المحنة ونخرج منها أكثر وحدة وقوة وتماسك، ويزداد هتافنا قوة، جيش واحد شعب واحد، فإننا على ثقة في تجاوز هذه المحنة بالدربة والحكمة والقوة بما يحافظ على أمن ووحدة البلاد وبما يمكننا من الانتقال الآمن للحكم المدني.
Khartoum, the capital, was rocked by bombing and shelling before the ceasefire announcement, and witnesses heard gunfire as the ceasefire and morning Eid prayers were due to begin. Fighting between the RSF and Sudan's army erupted on Saturday, derailing an internationally backed plan for a transition to a civilian democracy 4 years after the fall of Islamist autocrat Omar al-Bashir to mass protests and 2 years after a military coup. At least 350 people have been killed in the past struggle between two previously allied leaders of the ruling military junta, Army Chief Burhan, and RSF leader General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, who is widely known as Hemeti. There have been heartbreaking stories emerging from the devastating violence in Sudan. A young boy recounts his loss as bombs have killed his friends and he pleads for the fighting to cease.
ثم لا احنا السودان ما دار الا زي ده والله يا سودانيين احنا ما دار لهم زي ده اقسم بالله. والله ضرب زي الضرب. دهانات تخش في البيوت والله خش في بيوتنا.
Evacuation efforts by foreign governments have been hampered by the fighting near the airport and in residential areas in Khartoum. On Wednesday, Japan, through its Chief Cabinet Secretary, Hirokazu Matsuno, announced that Japan had initiated plans to rescue its nationals living in Sudan through the self-defense forces. Nigerian students in wartime Sudan lament their neglect by the Nigerian embassy. The National Association of Nigerian Students, Sudan, NANS, also in an open letter to the Nigerian government, solicited their immediate evacuation from Sudan. The students, numbering over 1,262, have appealed to the federal government to evacuate them from the Republic of Sudan, where there's a fierce military confrontation between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces. The clashes have also displaced thousands of civilians who fled the capital Khartoum, even some foreign nations, including Japan, Uganda, and Tanzania, who have begun evacuation plans of their nationals. So far, evacuation efforts by foreign governments has been hampered by the fighting near the airport and in residential areas in Khartoum. Temi Tokbe Ajijalaoluwaola, Western Spring Television News.
In the United Kingdom, Dominic Raab has resigned from his post as the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister after probe into allegations of bullying. In his resignation letter, Mr. Raab says he feels duty-bound to accept the outcome of the inquiry, but points out that the report by Adam Tolley Casey dismissed all but two of the claims leveled against him. Meanwhile, the Labour Party has said the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has no one to blame but himself for the current situation. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said Mr. Raab shouldn't have been in the job in the first place and that the PM was too weak. Meanwhile, Florida Governor and potential U.S. presidential candidate Ron DeSantis will meet British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly when he visits the UK at the end of the month. The Republican politician is also expected to visit companies with significant investment in Florida. Before the UK, he will make stops in South Korea, Japan, and Israel. Mr. DeSantis is widely expected to run for president in 2024, but has not yet formally announced his candidacy. In the contest to win the Republican presidential nomination, Mr. DeSantis will have to beat former U.S. President Donald Trump. To the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on Mexican legislators to support his country's fight against invading Russian forces. Mr. Zelensky made the call via a video call to a grouping of Mexican legislators called the Mexico-Ukraine Friendship Group, chastising those he accused of denying Ukraine's pursuit of peace. Mr. Zelensky further renewed his appeal for countries in the region to hold a summit on the issue, pressing Mexican legislators to show leadership in pursuing peace and pushing Russia to withdraw its troops. The speech was Mr. Zelensky's first address to Mexican legislators since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. However, Morena, the left-wing political party of Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has distanced itself from the broadcast, stating that the group does not represent a consensual position of the assembly. Elsewhere in Europe, rail workers went on strike across Germany this morning as protests over pay in Europe's largest economy widens. Germany has witnessed some of its most disruptive strikes in decades since last year, when the war in Ukraine sent energy and food prices soaring, leading to union pressuring for wages to rise in line with living costs. High inflation has also exacerbated labor problems in sectors like aviation that has faced a difficult transition following the COVID-19 pandemic. The rail workers' action coincided with a walkout by members of the Verdi Union at 4 German airports after around 700 departures were cancelled by strikes yesterday. The rail workers' strike, organized by the EVG Union, started at 3 a.m. local time and ended at 11 a.m., although nationwide disruption to the train network were expected to last the whole day. You're watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We'll be right back after this break.
Named Mao Zedong at birth, but globally known as Mao Zedong, he was a Chinese revolutionary and founder, People's Republic of China, which he led as chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from 1949 until his death in 1976. He was a communist who believed in the attainment of power by the instrumentality of gun. His wise saying, "Political power grows out of the barrel of gun," formed the major plank of his revolutionary struggle for the control of China. In the long span of his leadership and political power, Mao Zedong relentlessly entrenched the communist philosophy in China, which emphasized the revolutionary struggle of the vast majority of people against the exploiting class and their state structures. The communist leaders defined the class struggle as people's war. Mao Zedong was a story of grass to grace, having risen from peasantry to preeminent status as China's most respected leader. Western Spring Television identifies Mao Zedong as a major character in history.
Thank you for staying with us. Moving over to Asia, China's Foreign Minister Qin Gang has said both sides of the Taiwan Strait belong to China and that it is right and proper for China to uphold its sovereignty. Mr. Qin made the remarks at the Lantern Forum in Shanghai, where he discussed a wide range of topics from debt, global economy, and Taiwan. Mr. Qin said recent rhetorics accusing China of disrupting peace and stability across the strait were illogical and absurd. He noted that Beijing will continue to uphold the status quo. Meanwhile, suspected rebels have killed 5 soldiers in disputed Indian-administered Kashmir when they opened fire and threw explosive at an army truck. The Indian military disclosed this, stating that the vehicle caught fire due to likely use of grenades by the unidentified attackers in the southern Rajouri sector yesterday. The Army's Northern Command in the statement said 5 personnel of the Rashtriya Rifles Unit deployed for counter-terrorist operations in the area unfortunately lost their lives in the incident. Videos from the scene shared on social media showed an army vehicle engulfed in flames on the highway in the mountainous area. Kashmir is claimed in full but ruled in part by nuclear-armed India and Pakistan. Thousands of Sri Lankans have held a protest in the main city of Colombo demanding justice for the victims of the 2019 Easter Sunday bombing that killed nearly 270 people. The protesters this morning demanded the government uncover who they said were the real conspirators behind the attacks on 3 churches during Easter celebrations on April 21, 2019. 2 Catholics and 1 Protestant and 3 tourist hotels were targeted during the attack that killed 42 foreigners from 14 countries. Thousands of people, including Catholic clergy, lined up for a silent protest on both sides of the main road connecting Colombo with the country's international airport. They accuse the government for not taking adequate measures to deliver justice for the victims of the bombings and punish those responsible. In North America, Canadian police says it is investigating a major gold heist at Toronto's Pearson International Airport after millions of dollars of the precious metal and other valuables went missing. According to the police, thieves made off with more than $20 million in gold and other valuables on Monday. Regional Police Inspector Stephen Duyvestein told Newsman that a container was stolen after being unloaded from a plane at a cargo facility. Mr. Duyvestein said the robbery was very rare and no arrests had been made, but the investigators have their eyes open to all avenues.
What I can tell you is that on Monday, April 17th, 2023, an aircraft arrived here at the airport in the early evening. As per normal procedure, the aircraft was unloaded and cargo was transported from the aircraft to a holding cargo facility. Once this cargo was offloaded at a holding facility, subsequent to its arrival, this high-value container was removed by illegal means from the holding facility. This cargo was reported missing to the Peel Regional Police a short time later. An investigation has commenced. What I can say is that the container contained a high-value shipment. It did contain gold, but was not exclusive to gold and contained other items of monetary value. The total worth estimated at this time in our investigation for the property is estimated at just over $20 million. This remains an ongoing investigation led by the Peel Regional Police. It is being investigated by the Criminal Investigation Bureau at the Airport Division. This division and the command of the Airport Division has an absolutely wonderful working relationship with the RCMP, but at this time, this remains a Peel Regional Police investigation. Having said that, our relationship is so good with the RCMP that I have utmost confidence that if they could help us in this investigation, it can be a quick call.
And talking sports, Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta says he is very confident his Premier League leaders can return to winning ways when they host Southampton later today. The Gunners, who have squandered 2-goal lead to draw each of their past 2 games, are currently 4 points clear of Manchester City at the top. Arteta ahead of the match said what his side are playing for is something incredible, stating that the club hasn't fought for this position for a very long time. The Arsenal manager further added that his passion for the club lifts him up from the bad moments. Arsenal could extend their lead over City to 7 points with victory over Southampton. However, Pep Guardiola's side will have 2 games in hand when they host the Gunners at Etihad Stadium next Wednesday.
Oh, when you question yourself and I said, how have we lost him? And it's too late now. But then I was 5 a.m. the next morning and I could not wait to get up off my bed to come here to work, you know. And when you have that, is that you actually love what you do, you know. It's I have had a big passion for the game and being the Arsenal manager. But there is something else, you know. There is a purpose that is driving all the time here, that it's what we actually want to do. And that leaves me from my bed very early and with a lot of energy, and that's incredible thing to have in your life.
And away from football, James Allison has returned as Mercedes technical director in a major reorganization following the team's disappointing start to the season. The 55-year-old swaps roles with Mike Elliott, while Mike Elliott assumes the position of chief technical officer, to which Mr. Allison was appointed in a 2021 reshuffle. The changes come a month after Mercedes started the season in an uncompetitive position for the second consecutive year. The team said Allison's return to lead car design came at Elliott's instigation. Mr. Allison joined Mercedes in February 2017, having split with Ferrari the previous summer and led the racing group to 5 of its 8 consecutive Constructors' Championship from 2014 to 2021. Before we end Spring Global, here is a recap of our top stories. Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke has enjoined Muslim faithfuls not to discard the teachings of Ramadan as they mark Eid el-Fitr. Gunmen kills 10 members of the same family during an attack outside the city of Pietermaritzburg in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province. China's foreign minister, Qin Gang, has said both sides of the Taiwan Strait belongs to China and that it is right and proper for China to uphold its sovereignty. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. That ends Spring Global. I am Tunde Ido. Good evening.